today I'm going to be going over encounters and building them to be a little bit more memorable and exciting and more, I want to say more immersive. So I'm choosing just a theme here. So this is a swamp type encounter. Essentially, you get a plea from a druidess who essentially is worried about the state of her environment that she's in. She's kind of like in charge or kind of watches over the swamp. Well, there was a fairly recent addition to the swamp. A mated pair of black dragons had made their homes there, in which they were accepted. I mean, yeah, they were kind of a nuisance, but they were part of the ecology. Well, something happened to the female dragon. I don't know if she died or something happened to her, but essentially they lost their eggs, and the male was left on his own, and he kind of flipped out. He went crazy, he went AWOL. So essentially, he's just kind of gone around the swamp, raising hell and creating problems and all kinds of things. So the druidess has kind of reached out to the local area to kind of warn people and also to try to hire or basically recruit people to help her with the situation. So she's going to try to calm the dragon down or do something, or maybe even take it out. But that's kind of the premise of this. So I don't really have a particular setting that it would go into, but if you wanted like a swamp environment and you wanted a really tough battle and you'd want this for like upper mid tier to high level play, so this would be a kind of a fun 4 hour type thing, maybe take 2 sessions, but nonetheless that is kind of where I'm at. And the thing that you could do in Fantasy Grounds that makes it unique is that, and here I'm kind of making my own stat block. I've done a lot of videos on this where you can import your own content and then you can add to it as you need to. So this is kind of a summary here that is put out by when you import the stat block. And then what I was going to do here is take this information and I was going to expand upon it where you would put dialogue options and other things in here, like maybe a loot table or a treasure, to make this encounter more utility, more memorable, and certainly a lot more interesting and not so run of the mill. So this is a generic dragon here, the black dragon that comes with the SRD. So I kind of took a look at this and I was like, okay, this is how this is set up. You can use this and just modify it the way you want. So you don't have to use, the generic one. You can actually unlock it, and then you can take and basically shape it the way you want by making a copy of it. But in this case, I actually created my own stat block. I used ChatGPT, pretty much the same thing, except for I got a couple new details on here. And what I was doing now is going in and actually editing some of the content in here. So like these little hyphens here, I didn't want those in there. So this is just kind of a way to make this a little bit more unique and not so generic, because that's typically what you run into, especially if you have a lot of experience running games and such. As these kind of things get old, they kind of, I don't know, they just seem like they're run of the mill quite a bit, and it's really not any one person's fault, but you would think that with all the content that's out that you'd want it to stand out. But what happens is the publishers end up getting a deadline, and on top of that they have to have room for the entire adventure, so they're kind of cramped for space, so they can't add all those extras in there, which a lot of us would like, but some people don't need it. They just want the bare bones and they kind of do their own thing. But others kind of like it. They want those extras in there. So, you kind of get what you pay for type thing, but there again, it just kind of depends on what you need. And that's really what this whole thing kind of boils down to is, how much you want to put into it, how much time do you have, and when you do have the time, how do you do it? So I'm kind of going to go over both of those those things, those elements. So right now I'm kind of going through and fixing the summary. So I made up my own background. So Shadowmire is the name of the dragon. That's his nickname, or his street name, I guess you can call it. but his real name is Valtherian Zarkul, and that's his draconic name. He's a black dragon, full-grown adult dragon. I mean, this thing's pretty badass. It's a CR 14 challenge rating. It's pretty gnarly. He's got some. I mean, he's pretty tough. You don't want to mess with this guy, and he's basically super powerful. I mean, I don't even know if the players could actually challenge him directly, straight up. And I looked at the actual balancing part of it. So if you are getting ready to create a custom encounter, I would use this Kobold Fight Club, which really helps with this sort of thing. So, just for example, the Kobold Fight Club is just a website that allows you to kind of set this up. So, I'm going to add this black dragon to the encounter. And then here are the party members. So I have 3 party members at level 6, 1 at level 7, 1 at level 9. So the level 9 is actually an NPC, the Druidess, that calls on you. So she's like a NPC. But essentially, with all that in mind, you basically get a very difficult fight here. This is really, really hard. So you have to kind of be careful with when you're designing these. So this is meant to be a deadly encounter, so you might have to up the levels of the player. So instead of level 6, maybe we'll go to level 7. And then this one, maybe we'll go to level 8. And that way, you can have it, you can kind of see if it's going to really be, hard or not. But it's a challenge to balance these things out sometimes. And this is just kind of a rough idea. This isn't going to be perfect because you have to consider all the different attacks, all the different abilities. The CR numbers and stuff don't mean a whole lot if you've got like 3 dragons. I mean, that would be just insane. But this is a deadly encounter, even with this mix of adventures. So this kind of helps you determine like the strength of it and how it's going to unfold. And then you might put this challenge rating 14. This is a large creature. Creature type is, I think, is it a dragon? Yeah, dragons have their own creature type. And then native environment could be a swamp, which is what we already kind of have. There's a young black dragon. So anyways, there's a lot to digest when it comes to a complex big bad evil guy. It doesn't always have to be this complex, but at least you have a kind of a rough idea of what you're looking for in party levels. And here's kind of the breakdown for hard, deadly, that sort of thing. And then what you want to do is kind of put in your party numbers here and their levels, and then you could put the creature in there, and it will help you calculate the difficulty and that sort of thing. So that's one way to do it, or you can create a random one with this tool. So it works pretty good. So I'll make sure that this is in the description on the video. The next thing I wanted to go over was if you haven't read the monsters know what they're doing. That's a really good book. Keith Amon wrote it. He's a pretty cool guy. I had him on a couple times, or at least once, where we interviewed him, and we talked about this particular content. And he's an author, or at least he writes for like a paper or some sort of publication. But he also writes those books, which have been pretty famous. So he'll take creatures and he'll break them down, and he'll give you tips and discuss different things that occur. So you see, is the monsters know what they're doing? Okay, so let's go here. So I want to go to a black dragon, and what we're going to do is take a look at some of the tactics. So this talks about dragons and how they perform and operate their lair tactics. He kind of gets into the the nitty gritty of how dragon tactics work. And this one actually goes over the shadow dragon. Let me go back to, okay. So this will help you if you're going to design or run a dragon. So if you've never played D&D or you're kind of new to it, this is a really good, even if you've been a player for a while or a game master. So this talks about the different things that you'll run across when it comes to dragons. So dragons are kind of a tough thing to run. They're not easy, and they do have a lot of options. So this is something that you're going to have to kind of come across if you do run a dragon in a game. And then, they don't call it Dungeons and Dragons for no reason. I mean, there's definitely dragons in it. So I'm going to go to part 1 here. And this kind of breaks down about how they move, how they fly. Their big 3 for saving throws is Dex, Con, and Wisdom plus Charisma. They have usually a pretty high proficiency in Perception and Stealth, and they all have Blind Sight, Dark Vision. I mean, they're not easy to deal with. And then the features for their defining characteristics is they all have a breath weapon, so it's pretty gnarly. Like this Shadowmire has a acid breath weapon, which does like I think maximum damage and everything is like 54 points of damage if you rolled, maximum. And then if you roll a crit, that would be really devastating. But it recharges on a 5 or a 6. So on average, that means they can use that thing every 3 rounds roughly, depending on the dice roll. So that's just the average, but that's pretty gnarly. And then you have different levels of power for dragons. So adult dragons, they're considered legendary creatures at that point. They get legendary actions and lair actions, so they're really tough. And their boons are pretty gnarly. So when you look at an adult dragon, um, they basically take a limited turn on initiative count 20, and for their legendary actions, and they can come into play and up to 3 legendary actions. So at the end of a player's turn, that's pretty devastating. So they have pretty much 3 rough categories that they fall into. So movement restrictors, direct damage, and debilitators. So that's kind of what their main MO is as far as how they operate. So for instance, in this case, a black dragon can knock their enemies prone or blind them, and knocking enemies prone is a good really against melee attackers. And then this blindness is good against everybody because dragons have blind sight. So particularly good for shutting down spellcasters, especially if they're at least within 30 feet of each other. So the dragon is smart enough usually to know what to do. So that this is kind of their tactics. So when you have this kind of information, it makes it a little bit more useful and helpful to running a really advanced encounter like that. So I took some of these elements from here and I plugged those into ChatGPT, and I kind of created my own kind of workup for it. So you can create your own tactics, and you can kind of create your own dialogue too. So what I've done is basically I can take this information from this here about specifically about black dragons. So I'm going to copy that data, put that in here. So I'm going to put black dragon tactics, and then I'm going to put I'm going to ask it to summarize it. So I don't need every little bit of information, but I like most of it. So tactics. And what I'm doing here is making myself a little cheat sheet that I can put in the stat block. So when I'm running the encounter, it's right there. I don't have to look it up. Everything I need will be right in front of me. So I'm just going to take that little bit of information, which is helpful. Gives you some more ideas. You don't necessarily have to use all these, but these are definitely help you run the encounter if you are running into, where it's too easy or maybe too hard. You can withhold some of the stuff. And then far as that goes, I'm going to take this information up here, which is kind of a generic dragon type thing for just dragons in particular. And I'm going to plug that into this Chat GPT and summarize that. So this is going to give me kind of like a summary of what you can do with the dragon in case you haven't run one before, or you're rusty, or there's some features that you don't remember that you probably skipped. That I don't know how many times that I've run encounters, and since I didn't read it ahead of time, I didn't really understand the full impact of it, or I missed a lot of really cool features that could have been used. So this is kind of why I'm doing this, is because when you're running a complicated, like a final battle or something, it's kind of nice to know, what your options are, especially if you didn't have the time to go in and read it. Hey, Dan, what's up? So this is a kind of like a summary that I'm placing here, and all I'm doing is I'm going to copy and paste this and put it in the tactics area for the stat block in Fantasy Grounds. So in this case, what I'm going to do is come down. I'm going to scroll down. I'm in the notes section, by the way, and it's unlocked right now. And what I want to do is make a section here called Tactics, and I'll use this as just kind of like my own notes for me. So when I'm running this encounter, I can refer to this. And then if you use this, the Fantasy Grounds and stuff, you'll start getting used to, where this stuff is and how it works, and, all that sort of thing. So this is just going to take time if you're new to Fantasy Grounds to kind of get used to this. But once you get familiar with it, it makes life a lot easier. So these are just kind of things that I would employ potentially if I was going to run the dragon. So I have, all of this information now available to me if I wanted to run this encounter, and it's right here on the others tab, or the notes tab, for the NPC. So it's in the right spot, like right where you need it. And it's easier just to, go from the main tab and you can just flip over to the next. So that's kind of cool. I don't know what happened here, but a lot of this information didn't come over, which I think is probably a formatting issue. Yeah, it's something to do with this, but I can always copy and paste this stuff from the NPC stat block and import it here. So it didn't quite parse correctly. So I got some missing information here, but I can always go back and edit this. So I'm not too concerned about it. But here are the senses. That, oops. Let's see, I wanted to go back to the senses. But anyways, I'll go back and finish that. But I wanted to also show you some narrative tips. Basically, this might help you if you have kind of like writer's block, or maybe you're just not feeling well or whatever. So I'm going to bring over the dialogue options that I created for the dragon. So I made like a kind of like a list of different descriptions for the different actions. So I'm going to take this stuff here, this actual information, and bring this over as kind of like a narrative tool to help you. I got to watch some of your videos on this stuff so I can start making some more stuff. Yeah, no doubt, Dan. Got to watch, get practice. Basically, that's what you need to do, is practice, and you'll get better at it, more efficient, that sort of thing. So these are the tactics, and then this is going to be the dialogue. So what I want to do here is I'm going to put, I guess I'll put dialogue. It's basically like a read aloud type thing. So I'll just put, that in there. Why is that not going bold? See, Control B. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight the text, hit Control 3, and basically use this as a narrative tool. So Control 3, when you highlight this, is going to make that box, and this is what you can send to the chat. And basically, I had ChatGPT summarize these and create special kind of dialogue for each one of these attacks. So this will help you when you go to read this stuff aloud, and it will help you with the dialogue part. Sometimes you don't always have a good descriptor or a way to do it. It's it's better to do it kind of on the fly, but let's see, what are we doing here? Here we go. All right. So what these are different dialogue for different attacks. So we have, let's see, I want to change that. So like, for instance, we have the Dragon's Breath, a tail attack, the Wing Buffet, Frightful Presence. Here's the bites and claws. Here's the legendary actions. So this is essentially kind of helpful, like when you have a complicated encounter. Like, I don't know if I'd go through all this with a goblin encounter, but if you want to make your encounters memorable, you just might. You might put some dialogue issue, or some dialogue examples in there. So for instance, like if Shadowmire uses his acid breath, you can click on this and it will go into the chat, and it says, as Shadowmire inhales deeply, the air around him seems to quiver with anticipation. With a thunderous roar, he releases a devastating stream of corrosive acid. The landscape before him sizzles and smokes as the vegetation and earth dissolve, leaving behind a scarred testament to his anguish and power. So you have these like descriptions armed and ready to go in case, if you want to run this thing. So there's that. I've also took the liberty to not only add these extra things on the others tab, but to actually go in and change the tokens out. So this S token isn't going to cut it for me. So I actually did some research. I went through all of my crap that I have. I have so much assets, and it's a rare opportunity that I get to use them. So that's why I'm so excited about this, because I have tons of things. I never get to use them. I don't even know what I have. It's so embarrassing. So what I'm doing now is kind of backtracking and saying, okay, I got all this shit. What am I going to do with it? So this is an opportunity for me to use the assets that I actually invested in. So I've already imported some of this stuff in, but essentially I want to go over and go to my assets folder, and I'm already in the images area, but I want to go to the tokens area because I'm going to actually add a flat token here, which is going to be this really beautiful top-down token. And I took the time to actually put this light base on it because it's hard to see it on a map. You don't have if you don't have the contrast for it. This is also 512 by 512 in size because it's a large creature. So I was in Canva the other day and I put all that stuff in for that particular reason. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so this here was what I was using for that. So I took this and I added this in, and this token came from Bernardo Hasselman, which is kind of like a friend of mine. He was doing these tokens for a while. Right now he's kind of put it on hold for a while. He's back to teaching, but I took advantage of this and I actually put this in as a kind of like a token. And what I did is this background, this base, I actually got this from the Digital Dungeon Master. I was watching him work one day and he was putting these bases on, and I'm like, why are you doing that? He's like, well, you know how when you put them on a map, they're kind of hard to see them. So I was like, oh yeah. So he gave me this little base asset, and then you just play around with the opacity. Like you can turn it down to where it's just kind of barely visible, but it's still there. And what that does is it helps give you contrast between the token and the ground. So that's why I did that, and that's a pretty clever tool. And now I'm going to center this. So position, go to center. There we go. So this is just kind of a technique that you can use to help make your tokens stand out, especially those 3D ones. They don't have a little base on them or something. That kind of, you don't have that contrast that you're going to need. Like if you have a dark map, it's going to be hard to see this because it's already dark token. But with this little gray kind of faded out transparent base, it'll kind of help make it stand out. So that's what I did there. And now I'm going to actually make the other art for it. So I'm going to go back to Fantasy Grounds for a minute. And this is going to be the token for it. The full body art, I kind of already have that picked out. So again, I used ChatGPT to create some of this content. So just kind of forewarn you, I am using artificial intelligence to create the images. So it's image generation, not necessarily art. And I'm going to go back to assets, and this time go to images, and then go to the campaign images. So these are images that were created in Fantasy Ground or in a Chat GPT. So I got one where the dragon's eating a crocodile, and then here's a cool one where it's kind of sitting in his lair. So I have some options here, like which I might use this one here as the actual kind of the 3D version of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this as my full body image, which would be this image that I'm using. So use that there. So this would be the image that I share with the players. So that's just a kind of a way to kind of show what this thing looks like as you're running the encounter. And now for the token camera option, is I'm going to take this image, the same image, and then put it in Canva or in a tool like that and work on it so where I can have the full kind of 3D image and then use the tool to size it up properly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to Canva and I'm going to start a new design. And this one is going to be custom size. And I'm going to do, since it's kind of sitting upright, it's not necessarily horizontal, I'm going to use an 800 by, or like 1,000 wide by 800 tall. Is that what I want? I want, is it 800 by, yeah, I want this orientation. So this is recommended. The size is recommended by Fantasy Grounds. If you go to the Atlassian under the product guidelines, this is kind of what they want as far as standardization for file format, sizing, all that stuff. So this way it looks decent when you put it in Fantasy Grounds. It's not going to be high end perfect, but it's going to be decent. So let's see. So I want to do that, and then I'm going to take the image that I elected to use, and this is going to be like my 3D token type thing. So this is the image I want to use, and since this is a horizontally orientated thing, I'm going to have to kind of stretch it out and play with it and see what I want to do with it. So this is close. Let me take this and go like, I want to fit it in that in that spot, but I want to utilize as much of this as I can. I might have to go horizontal. Yeah, unfortunately, that's what I'm going to have to do, I think. Yeah, I was hoping to get away with, I mean, I could do it this way, but it's a little small. That's kind of what I'm worried about. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this around back to 1,000 by 800 instead of 800 by 1,000. You can do 1,000 by 1,000. Let's do that just in case. Okay, so we're going to resize the design. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot cleaner. So I'm going to stretch it to where it's going to utilize most of the space, and then center it a little bit more, or put it down here at least. And then I'm going to use a tool where you can use other tools, but if you have a paid version of Canva, they have a background remover, so you can remove most of that background. That way, so you can do something like that. And you can take this image right here and actually cut out all this stuff if you want. So that's kind of up to you. And then you notice these horns are kind of cut off up here. So this may not be the right fit for you, but you can take this brush size and increase it and go through and kind of cut out the stuff that you don't want, which is kind of helpful. So you get a majority of it out, and then you can go in and fine tune it. But I think for the most part, this will take out, quite a bit of stuff in here. And then if you want to, like, let's say you actually make a mistake, you can always restore it. So I have to come down here and kind of fix that part of it because I took too much. But you'll get used to doing this with the images after a while if you're not used to doing this. And then I got a smaller brush, and you can come in here and meticulously go through and remove whatever this stuff is. I think that's one way to do it. I think this is a little bit harder to do, to be honest with you. I think it'd be easier to use like Paint Shop, Photoshop, or something like that, or Adobe, because it has tools for that. And this is kind of a way to kind of quick and dirty way to do it. But anyway, so this is just one way of doing it. And then you can go back to the design. We're getting closer. So what I want to do with this actually is stretch this out a little bit more. And then what I'm going to do is I need to fix that part again. So I want to go back to restore. I want to fix the tail. Yeah, see, I took way too much out of there. So this is kind of, the things that you'll have to deal with when you're doing this sort of thing. But yeah, so I'll go back to the brush, and then this thing here, I'm going to take this and actually leave that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and first give it a title. Let's see, Black Dragon underscore 3D, so I remember, so I know what the heck it is. That's another thing, is naming your assets so you know what it is. And go to share. I'm going to download this as a transparent background so it doesn't capture all this stuff in the back. And then I'm going to put it in, what do you call it, in GIMP. Take out the rest of that. So this isn't always the best option for removing the background. So you can use other things. So I'm going to use GIMP, which is free. And this is the most time-consuming part of doing custom content, is the artwork. Building the assets is time-consuming. So, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of work involved with that, especially if you're not very familiar with the tools. It can really be annoying. And, just kind of giving you a forewarning that once you go down this road, there's quite a bit of learning that has to take place if you haven't done this before. So I'm just kind of giving you a heads up. It's taken me years to get to this point because I was pretty ignorant about, Photoshop and those sort of things. So now that I have this in Canva, there's a couple good things about this. Or not Canva, but GIMP. So Canva doesn't support the WebP format yet. So I can export it at this point into WebP format, which will save me a step from having to convert it later. The other thing is, like in this thing, whenever you have an image like this is already a PNG. It has a transparent layer already. But if you haven't used GIMP before, you go to layer, and then you go transparency, and then you add an alpha channel first. And that's how you get this, you can get the transparency set up. And then there's a fuzzy select tool. And what that does is when you click on like this background information here, you can just hit delete and it will take out these sections that you don't want. So you can kind of go through this and kind of remove the elements that you don't want. The trick is, though, is that since this image shares a lot of the colors with the background, that's kind of difficult to deal with. So you got to pick photos that are not going to give you as much grief. Like this here, when I go to select this, since this information is close to that, it's going to try to take out stuff that you don't want. And that's what I was saying. Like, it's hard to do that if the image itself has some qualities that are similar to the subject. So the background kind of matches the subject, and that makes it much harder to take out these spots that you want to remove from the image. So you got to kind of pick the images wisely. So this wasn't a very wise choice, but it's not the end of the world. I'm not doing this for a commercial product, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but you get the idea that you can create more work for yourself than it's worth. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So there's all kinds of little caveats here that you're gonna you're gonna notice as you use Fantasy Grounds and as you start editing. See, there's where it's giving me grief. So what you do is you play with the threshold, which is kind of like your sensitivity for the sort of thing. So you can turn it down a little bit, and that will hopefully keep. Yeah, see, now it will only grab what I want it to, and that's kind of something you'll have to learn as you go, because all the different programs have a different sensitivity to it. So it depends on how the algorithm was programmed. So some work better than others. Like you'll notice that some programs do this type of thing better than others. So it really depends on, what you have access to and how much you're willing to put into it. So it is a lot of work. I'll tell you that right now. And it gets harder when you make these kinds of I wouldn't say a mistake, but you make an assumption here and then you go, oh, crap, that's going to take forever. So you got to be careful with that. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, is this image and all this work worth the encounter that I'm trying to build? Maybe. I think, like if you're doing a really big like stream online or something, yeah, maybe. But if it's just around a table and it's just your friends and stuff, I don't know. I don't know if I'd go through all this or not. Maybe if I was trying to impress somebody or, get someone on board with Fantasy Grounds or something, maybe. But even then, that's not really realistic, right? We don't normally go through all this crap unless we have to. So this kind of a unrealistic thing. If you're showing people this and then they don't ever use it, that's one thing. But if you give someone a false impression that, oh, this is so easy and this is how cool it can be, but when you actually get to doing it, it's not that easy. It's not as simple as it looks, especially if you're not, an artist or you're not someone familiar with these kinds of tools. It can really be a downer. And I've looked at other videos for other virtual tabletops, and they're showing some really neat stuff. Like I looked at some stuff for Foundry, but then I look at the actual, like, what does it take to do it? It's a lot of work, man. It's like, you got all these extensions and plugins, and then you got all these like fancy third party things that you have to pay for. And then, before you know it, it's like, I don't know if it's even worth it, to be honest. So you got to kind of think about that when you see these flashy videos. Yeah, I think how much production went into this to get where that person got. And that's kind of what you got to think about too in regards to, editing stuff and getting into Fantasy Grounds is it worth all this? You could just go with the basics and just use the dragon tokens and stuff they give you. You don't have to go through all this. But anyway, so I'm done kind of editing. I think that's good enough for now. Not going to worry about too much more. I think I got the majority of it. Now what I'm going to do is hit File, Export As. It says Black Dragon 3D. So what I'm going to do is change the suffix here to web p, and then I'm going to hit export, and it's going to come up with the dialog. So normally they say to use image quality of 75%, which I'll dial this down. I don't change anything else. I leave everything else as is and hit export, and you'll have the WebP version of this, which is what they recommend. And then it's already kind of cut out, so that would be a good thing overall. So now I'm going to go back into here, which is where this image exists. And then there is a program or a tool that was put out for developers. So this is the Fantasy Ground Image Metadata Builder. So I'll put the link for that in there. It's not a secret, but it's definitely not something they advertise. It's more like they kind of put it out for developers because that's kind of the tools that you would use to set up the metadata for the 3D images. So that's kind of what this is. It's just then it's another tool you got to use. So I don't think they want to add more complication to the program. But if you're going to do any major conversions or you want to do something like that, you're going to have to use this tool to line up the metadata so that it looks better when you put it on the map. You don't have to do this. It will scale kind of okay, but it'll look kind of goofy in some regards. So let me go back to the tool, and all you do is you just drag your image into the tool, wait a second, it populates, and what you're going to do is specify the region of where your data points are. So you're going to set your measurement region, and it says set a region with a known height or width. So I'm going to come out over here and kind of click on this zone up here, and then it says set a region with a known height or width. So we're going to come over here and kind of come right up here to the edge here. And now it says define the height or width of measurement region in feet. So we need to know how tall these things are. So I'm going to do a little research, make sure I got this right. I know it's a large creature. It's probably going to be over 16 feet, but it's sitting down, so who knows? So height of a black dragon. So I don't need the length so much. I need the height. The length will help you with the ratio, but it's not gonna really give you the. Okay, I was right. 16 feet. So 26 meters in length, and usually maximum size of 16 feet tall. So that's about right. So 16 feet was a good guess. So that's going to be a large creature. And what we want to do is in their height, we're going to put 16. We'll do 16.1. And then the expected grid height. So if it's going to be, like sitting up, and you want the grid height, in this case, it's going to be 3. So these are all in feet, so 3 or 15 feet or whatever. So roughly 3 grid height, roughly. Or it could be 4, but in this case, I'm going to go with 3 because that's a lot closer. And then you want to set your center floor, which is like the center of this image. So you click that, and then I'm going to click kind of roughly semi-centered there. So that is basically how you set this up. So you set your upper region, your width, and your bottom right. Then you calculate how height, like in height, and then your expected grid size. In this case, I'm thinking 3 tall, so 15 feet roughly. And then you set your center floor, which in this case I determined is like right in here. And then we're going to save the XML. So once that's exported, that's going to go into the folder as well as the image. So you have to have both of those together. So let's minimize this and let's see what we got here. So what is this? Okay, so that's the WebP, and then here's the definition file for it. And all this is, honestly, is just coordinates. It just kind of maps out the image. So when you load it in Fantasy Grounds, it will look at the data and go, oh, okay, that's the height, that's the width, here's the center point. And so that way it stretches the image around the 3D perspective. That's what that does. It's like mapping an image in a program. So let's go into the assets, and I want to go to campaign. Make sure I'm in images, go here. And then I want to go to, not to the store, I want to go to the folder. And what I'm going to do is make a new subfolder. So that way it's not mixed up. So I'm going to say 3D assets. And that way, when I go to navigate in Fantasy Grounds, I'll know which is which. So there's the XML file. And if I bring this up, if I actually open it with a program like Notepad, you'll see that it's just all these are coordinates. The type of font or text and then the coordinates. That's all that is, really. It's just locations, offsets, coordinates, that sort of thing. They have to be in the same folder together, and you don't want to rename these if possible. You want to keep these the same name. If you go and accidentally change the name of this dragon later on, it's going to break it's going to break this unless you rename that file too. So that's an important thing. And now I'm going to hit this, whenever you add something to Fantasy Grounds or move it, you want to hit refresh. Now there's the little subfolder I made, and then here's the dragon. So it turned out okay. It's not too bad. And then what I'm going to do is take this and drag it into here. Drag the dragon. Drag it on. Okay, so that's basically how you can set this up. So you have your full artwork, you have your camera token, and then you have the flat token. So now let's put this on a map in the combat tracker to kind of see what we got here. So in the combat tracker, I also have, I'm going to just use this for testing purposes. So drag that over there, change the visibility, change the actual, I have the, what is it, the identity. It wasn't identified. I went ahead and identified it. And then close that. And this is normally how I'd set up my table anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get that set up. Here's my funky acid kind of deadly dice color. So this is kind of getting towards theming this for the actual setting. If you want this to look good and you kind of want it to have a theme to it, this is a good way to do that. So, you got this image back here, which I'd probably rough up the edges and make it look more like it's blending into the background. And then for the, you got all this stuff now. So you got all this stuff you can share with your players. So I can go like this, click on this image and share this, go click on share picture, and that'll share. This is a shared asset now, which players can see. Now, shared assets is kind of a new thing. So if you go into your images or your assets folder, there's a folder down here called shared. So any maps or images that you've shared, it's going to be in here. If you want to unshare them, you just go in here and you edit it and delete it out. So this is new. So if before you had to do it from the actual image list, and then there was a way to filter it out, and then you would go to shared, and that you don't do that anymore. They've changed it. So if you're wondering where that went, that's where it went. So this is the shared asset. Now I'm going to take this and put it on a map. So I've already took the liberty to find a map that is themed for the swamp and for this encounter. And what I want to do is put this on here. I'm going to right click, go to view, and zoom to fit. And here's the image right here. And then I'm going to take this dragon and drag it on the map. So this is the dragon right here. And as you can see, it takes up 4 squares. So that's right. And then if I wanted to rotate it, I could at this point. So you click on the token and hold the shift key. There we go. So as you can see, this little gray thing helps out, especially like if you're in a darker area, it's harder to see that token. So I'm going to put them back over here. And if you notice, when you put a large token, it goes in between all 4s. So you don't want it like that. You want it in between at the vertice of all 4 squares. A huge creature is going to take up 6. They'll have 2 additional squares, but in this case, it's going to be all 4 of these. So that's what it kind of looks okay. Not too bad. And then I have all the line of sight on here, that sort of thing. So it looks all right. Looks kind of cool. So that's kind of what that looks like. Now let's see what happens if we switch it to the 3D mode. Yep. So here's our token. Yeah, looks okay. Not bad. It looks a little bit stretched, but I think I need to adjust that. But there again is I think it's because I don't have it set somewhere correct on the height. I think I got that backwards or messed up, but nonetheless, there's your thing. I don't think I defined the image correctly because this looks really weird on the bottom. So we'll see. But nonetheless, that's kind of what you're looking at here. So you can be sitting on a pile of treasure in here. And then we can set the time of day so that the lighting in the background is a little darker. So instead of being daytime, let's set it to, let's go with dusk or even darkness. Let's go with the night, moonlight. There we go. So that looks even better. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, so that's kind of, making these encounters a little bit more interesting. So, I added my own notes back here and made my own dialogue. I have my own like tactics thing going on back here, which I stole from the monsters know what they're doing. And then, of course, here's all the regular stuff that comes with the dragons. And then over here on the background was something I made up for that goes with the lore of the story in here. And then I have, what else is it that I have? Oh, I wanted to get to talk about like spell tokens. So that's something that a lot of people fight with, and I don't know if it's worth it or not. But if it was me and I was going to make this a memorable encounter, and I was going to stream it and all that kind of stuff, I would definitely be looking at some tokens to show some of the attacks. So let's just say, for instance, let's do the acid thing. So you get this stream of acid, right? And that's something that you may want to try to find an asset for that to kind of show the stream of the breath weapon. I think it goes up to 60 feet. So I will look to see if I have anything like that. I don't know. I don't remember. That's another thing. When you got so many assets, you don't even know what you have. It's kind of embarrassing, but you want it to be a token. So you don't necessarily want it to be in the images folder. You actually want this to be a token so you can kind of move it around. You got a little bit more flexibility doing it that way. So I want to look up acid, which is probably not a good search term. It's probably too many uh, items that have that attached to it, but I'm going to look to see what kind of tokens I have. So this is kind of a cone. Here we go. So this might work. It's not exactly a stream, but that's kind of an acid arrow. But you could do, here's breath weapon, here's a generic line. I don't know I don't see anything. It's probably not the right format. Yeah, so it's WebM. That's why these need to be converted to web or to the correct codec because these are probably animated. So I wanted to take something like this, or whatever you need to do. That's another acid arrow, but find a breath weapon that you want to use and convert it. So I might want to take and find out where these are at, find out what these are, and convert these over into a, let's see, this is a generic animated spell token. So I want to see if I can find the folder that that's in. So I want to go to folder, and then I'm going to go to Fantasy Grounds, and I'm pretty sure I have those in tokens. So I want to go to acid, and I want to show you how this can be a problem. Yeah, so here's the breath weapons right here. So I want to go, I'm going to right click and go to open folder location. So all of these assets are probably no good to me because they are not converted to the proper format. So I'm going to do that now. All of these need to be converted over. I got these from a third party, and this is kind of where, if you're not used to Fantasy Grounds, it can be really frustrating. So these are in WebM format, but they're probably in a VP9. So if I kind of hover over this and let this come up, it says VP8. Let me take a look at the acid. Where is that? Breath weapon, acid. Yeah, so it's VP9 in that case. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring up the shutter encoder, which is what I would recommend for doing any of your token conversions. So this is kind of important because this is something that comes up quite often in the community. I've seen this. So I'm going to take all of these and bring up the shutter encoder, and I'm going to drag and drop those in here. So these are all the ones I want to convert to the correct format. So now what I'm going to do is choose the format. So we're going to go with VP8, and then we want to make sure there's no audio. So this audio, we need to make sure that there's nothing for audio. Oops. So, and then there is some special image adjustments that we can use, we want to make sure that we preserve, here's the audio settings. We want to make sure there's no audio, and we don't want any audio in this. So we're stripping out any audio that might be a part of it. Even if it's silent audio, it's still going to break the usability. Fantasy Grounds won't accept it. And then corrections, advanced features. So we want to preserve the alpha channel, enable alpha channel. So that's going to help so that we don't have that gray or kind of boxed background. It's very important for that. So it maintains the transparency around that. And that's pretty much, I'm not going to mess with the image adjustment, but that's basically how you can go in and edit that. So I'll reset that. I don't want to mess with that. And then it's basically a short little video with the transparency on it. So once that's done, once you have all your parameters, you can start this function, and it'll go through and it'll start converting all of these files into a VP8 with the correct format and strip the audio out and keep the transparency. So that's one of the things you'll run across if you're running a Fantasy Grounds session and all of a sudden you see something there but it's blank. It's more than likely because it's the wrong format, or it has audio embedded into it. There's maps out there that are really cool, like 3D, looking animated maps, but they have an audio file embedded into it. So if you're using it for like Roll20 or Foundry, it works. It just does because all the codecs are built into the browser. But for Fantasy Grounds, for Unity, it doesn't accept that format. So it has to be just a straight VP8 format with no audio. And if you need to preserve the background, you can do that. So that's basically how that is. And what I want to do is I'm going to get rid of the stuff I don't need anymore. So that's probably right in here. So I'll get rid of those. And up to here. Nope. I think that's good. VP8. This one, no. Whoops. Okay, so there we go. All right, so now we're going to go back to where we were. I'm going to hit refresh, and hopefully that'll bring those in. Did it work? I don't know. Let's try it again. So I'm going to go back to here, and acid, we'll try breath this time. Yeah, I don't know. It don't look like it. Oh, here it is. It's just hard to see. Okay. I have to give it a chance. So let's see. Line, burst. There's orange. It didn't have a green. That's crazy. Well, anyways, you can use this line burst. Oh, here it is. Green. Yeah, there we go. Cool. All right. So what we're going to do with that is, let's see if that is a token or not. That's what I need to find out. So acid, breath, green, I guess is a way to narrow it down. All right, so that's that. So it doesn't look like anything right now because of the preview, but that's the preview for it. So what we're going to do with that is drag this onto the hotkeys because it is a token at this point. And then maybe drag it up here. Use this for, oops. Yeah, so we can take that and kind of move it. Maybe make it scale it more, like make it larger. So it's supposed to be 60 feet, so we can scale that if we need to. So let's see that, and gonna hold down the Alt key. Yeah, so you got to play around with this stuff, but you got to also consider, is it worth all this extra effort? So that's the other thing. And then I got to make sure that I am lock this up and Can I move it now? Yeah, I don't know what I did wrong here. Let's see. It's locked. It's on the map. It's a token. Let's see if I can do anything with this one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to play with that. But basically, yeah, that's not exactly what I wanted. But this is basically how you could do something like that. You can add this like acid stream to your maps and such. So this may not be a good fit, but nonetheless, you get the idea. So let me see if I can remove that. I don't know if the behavior changed, but I did add it as a token, and you used to be able to move them around. I don't know if that's something that changed with the new update or not. It just seems kind of weird that I can't interact with it now. It's like it's on a layer that I can't touch. So I am in the play mode, but I don't see any way I can actually move it. It's almost like it's on a different layer. Let me go into the line of sight layer. Yeah, I can't interact with it. So I don't know what's going on with it, but let me do that. No. Anyway, so you get the idea that you can you can add animated assets if you really wanted to make it fancy. I don't have it set up right, but essentially I'd have this, going the other direction, obviously. And it's not letting me select or interact with it, which I think is kind of weird. It's not letting me do anything with it. I can't even right click and remove it. So something is not right. I'm going to report this actually because this used to work before. It could just be that it's because it's a web P or VP8 or whatever, but I don't know. But anyway, so you can make these things a lot more memorable. So if there's any other actions like this acid aura, maybe you can use the aura extension and then set it up to where, you have that aura. And you can use this, it's 15 feet away. And on each of its turns, the creatures within 15 feet of him take 7 or 2d6 acid damage. So that's pretty gnarly. So that'd be neat to have a token ready for that. And then if you wanted to, like maybe this wing buffet will have like some, some air or some kind of wind. So if you have the assets in your sessions, like if I go back to assets and I want to go to Fantasy Grounds animation, I guess is what I want to look for. Nope. Let's go to animated. So I'm going to go to images first and then search for animated. And it should bring me to some of the animated assets. So yeah, so dust. That's kind of what I wanted. So you can add some dust to this in the background or air particles. It might be what I'm looking for. So I want to go to the layers and then go to air particles, drop that in there. And as it stands now, it's going to be like a 40 by 40 area, which may be too big or not big enough. So depending on the radius, so I think it said 50 feet or something like that. Let me look at that. So the wind buffet, it says wing buffet. No, that's not what I wanted. I think it was, maybe it was that. Anyway, so this air can be kicked up, and you can use an asset like that to make it better. So let's click on that. Yeah, so you can do something like that maybe, but that's a little bit too big. So I might scale that down because that's 40 by 20. So to fix that, I'd have to go back, select it, and then I could shrink it, but I want to do it right the first time, kind of out of the gate. So I want to bring that over here, change this dimension to 20, and this one will scale down. There we go. That's a lot better. That's a lot closer. That's what I was looking for. So this could be like when they do their wing attack, you can activate this. You can also shut it off so where they can't see it right now, but when the time comes, you can activate that. It's going to show like maybe the wind is kicking up. So you can do all kinds of really cool little tricks like that to make it look more interesting. And then this way you don't need the whole map to be animated, just little pieces of it. So that might be useful. What else is there in here that might, like if you had a blue dragon, these lightning strikes would be pretty cool. Let's see, what else do we have? I hope they put dragonflies in here. That'd be kind of a cool flying asset if they haven't already. Yeah, so you can actually make it to where these trees are moving around, so you can add little bits on the trees to make it look like it's like the trees are kind of flexing around. There's some more steam looking stuff. Yeah, so you know, pick your battles, figure out what's worth to you, and use some of the assets that you pay for. Here's a lightning cloud. Here's some smoke rings. So there's not a lot of options here. You could probably source your own, and you go out and get your own 3D assets but this is kind of a cool thing to do to kind of make the map more interesting. So I'm going to go back to the play mode and take a look at this. Yeah, that's pretty neat. So yeah, making these encounters more memorable and more interesting and not so run of the mill, because now if I go into NPCs, let me close this map for now. Go to NPCs and then go to Black Dragon. This is kind of what you get with the with the SRD or the monster manual. And my hat's off to Doug and whoever had to do all these, because that's a lot of work. If you guys saw earlier when I was converting over those images, that was crazy. So this is like you get all this stuff in the back here, including the summary and all this other stuff. But in this case, instead of having all this, because I don't need all of the different things here, and like this stuff here, I don't need all that. So I kind of have my own thing, and then instead of using this type of thing, I put in my own little notes and here. So we did like the wing assault. It says, with a surge of strength, Shadowmire unleashes a legendary wing assault. The beating of his wings generates a tempestuous vortex, sending debris flying and forcing his foes to shield themselves against the onslaught. It's a spectacle of nature's fury, mirrored in wrath of a dragon wronged. So this is kind of cool. This would really kind of make or break for a good encounter or something memorable. So if you guys are going to run an epic encounter, that might be worth the time for that. I don't know if you want to do this for every single encounter, but if you want them to be memorable, I think it would be nice if you had a little bit of different art, maybe some fancy tokens. You don't have to do it for everything, just for the stuff that matters to you. But I will put the tools, the links, all that stuff at the end of this video in the description, so you guys can go back to it later and revisit that. But essentially, I used the Cobalt Fight Club. The map that I'm using was on Fantasy Grounds. This is one of my favorite. My favorite artist is Chris, Game Tile Warehouse. He became kind of like a friend to me. We had a little bit of a falling out, but I just think it was silly. But I think we were just tired. We were trying to do something and it didn't turn out right, and we kind of got mad at each other for no reason. It's silly human stuff. So let's see, forums. Let's go to the FGU store. And I wanted to say that it's not what you would think. So it's under the Meanders maps. These do not have line of sight, by the way, because they were older. They were put out before, but lots of token packs, really good maps, detailed quality images. And I know that this particular map set was on page 3. So I got to go through that. I wish I can just type in the page, but I'm not going to worry about that. But yeah, so I believe it was in a folder I would not expect it to be in, because it has a what do you call it, a strange kind of description. Yeah, so it's called Undervaults and Dragon Lair. So this is where I got the map from. So it's this one here. But the way this is set up in Fantasy Grounds is pretty sweet, because if you go to modules, and I have it loaded in here, I believe. So here's the Undervaults. And you go to maps and images. I wish more publishers would do this. Some do, some don't. But when you have a collection of images like this, it sucks to have to go through and open up every single one of them just to see it. So what I talked him into doing when he was making these is, since I was his patron and stuff, is to make this kind of a summary sheet. And I kind of wish that Smiteworks would do this with their asset pack, so you kind of know what you're getting. So now that I have this thumbnail, I can kind of zoom in and get an overview of the content I have, and then I can click on the actual image. So if I wanted to look at this ice map, it's linked directly to the image. So I don't have to monkey around with it, because I get kind of sick of going through all the assets and trying to figure out what I have. If I had a summary, an image summary, and I could just click on this, or at least get an idea of what's in each folder, that would be a huge help for me anyways. I don't know what the rest of you, but this would be a request that I think I'm going to put on the new idea informer thing is, let's get a preview image of a thumbnail of all the assets that are inside of a map pack or a asset pack, or whatever. It's going to take whoever does this a little bit more work, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. So having a preview of it without having to open up every single frickin' folder and stuff is just mind-boggling. I really don't know why. I kind of did something like this on the Forge. I started to do this where I have like a preview of all the different assets, like all the little tidbits that you can put on maps and such. But I kind of gave up on it because at that time Fantasy Grounds was changing, and it kind of broke my workflow. And then I was getting a lot of negative comments, like people say, "Oh, you forgot this," and I got to the point where I just stopped caring. And once you make something, you have to maintain it, and it's a pain in the ass. You think, "Oh, I'm gonna make some money." No, you're not. You're gonna be stuck maintaining that product forever. So I don't know. I'm kind of got mixed feelings about putting stuff on the Forge, or that sort of thing, because of that reason. I don't have the time to maintain a gazillion things. If that was the only thing I was doing, fine, that'd be great, but it's not. So I'll let someone else worry about that. I'll make money a different way. But this is kind of a cool idea. I wish more adventures did that, because it would help you understand the nature of it. And what I like also about those images is that they're syncable. So most of them, you can connect them together, so you can use them as tiles and put them on a map. And I think they would work well for a quick map. If you don't worry about line of sight and such, and you just need a really quick tile, that would be perfect for that. So if you're going to use the quick map method, like if you take an encounter, and let's see, I'm just going to quickly build an encounter. Let's see, I don't need that. So take that, grab the dragon, put him in there as part of the encounter, do this. And now you have this quick map option now. So what this would imply is that you don't need to have a big elaborate map like I had earlier. You can just click on quick map and then go to your assets and drag it in here if you want. Or let's see what this is. We'll say dragon. It didn't inherit this because we'll do that. Okay, so you're going to drag the encounter in there. So take that, drag it in here. There we go. Okay, so now you can take this and go into your map. So I want to check out a meander, see if I can find one. Yeah, so you can use, here's the Fantasy Grounds meanders things here. So you could take one of these, for instance, and use that for your quick map. And then if you use it as a fill, it's going to tile it. So I wouldn't even do that because it's already got a predetermined size. If you use it for fill, it's not going to look right. It's going to tile it. So you want to only use tiles or things that are set up for that. But I'm going to go ahead and use this just as is and hit submit. And there we go. So then when you open this map up, you can look at it, and this would be already kind of set. Let's see what we got. Yeah, he's in the wrong spot because I didn't place it right, but you get it. You get the idea. And you can turn the grid on if you want, so you can see what's going on. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's what quick maps are for. They're really meant for quickness. You don't need line of sight and all that. That's if you're going to do that, then it's no longer a quick map, right? Now you're just making a regular map. So this is just for like if you need to throw something down real quick, like you're doing a hex crawl or maybe an encounter in between planned encounters, that sort of thing, or theater of the mind. You switch over to this mode here and bring on a couple of your players and kind of have them standing next to each other like they're talking, role playing, that sort of thing. You don't need to have line of sight and 3D things on everything. Just use it judiciously as needed. Anyways, that's enough for now. I think I rambled on long enough. Hopefully, some of that helps you and inspires you to do your own and utilize the assets that you've collected. If you've been one of those people like myself that's been collecting for over 10 years now and finally getting around to using some of the stuff that I have, that's a good thing. But like I said, making these extras, doing a little research. Remember, I had to find and look up how tall the dragon was. It was 16 feet. I think I messed up in this metadata area. I don't think this was right in this area. 16 feet was right, but I don't know if this area thing was correct here. So I'd have to kind of look at that. But I may have messed up when I did set the measurements area. So probably the known height would be like up in here. And then the bottom region probably like here for width. That's probably why it looked all stretched out, all weird. And then I don't know if I did this right, but maybe I'll change that to 4 and then set the center floor right about there and then save it. So I have to play around and get used to the tool more, but anyways. So this is just a kind of thing to kind of inspire you to make bigger and better things. Take a little extra time. This did take a long time because I was, doing it on the fly. But if I had done more homework and did everything kind of in a steps and not jumping all over the place, it would have taken a lot less time. But anyways, guys, have a good weekend, and I'll see you around. And I think coming up, I think next week, next Friday, I'm going to be doing a stream for the Lost Mine or Lost Caverns of Sojkant, and that one we're going to go over tables. But this is just kind of a kind of an overall type thing that I wanted to show you guys that can possibly make your encounters more memorable, a little bit more advanced setup, and your game prep. But this is don't have to do this for everything. Maybe just